Welcome to episode 42 of the International Web Effectiveness Podcast. I'm Bill Scully, joined as always by Bill Hunt, and we're here to help you improve your web presence and manage global websites more effectively. Today we're going to be talking about why your website is killing your business. But before we get into it, please subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, tell someone and leave us a quick review. Reviews help us keep going and help new listeners find us. In our last episode, episode 41, hreflang in the AI era, we discussed why correctly implemented hreflang tags can still result in pages with the wrong country appearing in AI search. If you're having issues with that, I suggest you go back to that one and give it a listen. So, Bill, we've been talking about some of our frustrations recently. And I guess the more I talk about it, the more I get frustrated. All these little things that are so simple to fix or even check, and they're just getting in the way of completing things and driving me crazy. Why don't you talk about your latest anecdote? We were talking about this yesterday over lunch.
Yeah, I think it's very similar. I mean, mine was identical to what you were talking about, right? Friction, this idea of friction is anything that prevents us from completing our task, right? And what we were talking about is we were both trying to use miles or points to book a flight. And in my case, I went to the airline's page to, I knew the flight that I wanted. I went to do it. I was looking for the option because, I'm pretty loyal to United. This wasn't United in this case. And was looking for the option to click that I wanted a mileage flight, that I wanted to pay for it with miles. And there was nothing existing on the booking form. So I said, well, where the hell is this? And I looked and went to the actual their mileage program page. And everything on this page was like the history of it, and it was how to earn miles, how many miles I had. There was nothing on the page about the program on how to redeem them. And I mean, I was looking like, is there a small little button somewhere? I mean, literally nowhere on their mileage program page was their ability. And I think similar to what you found, you need to go through the whole experience and then you can then get an option all the way, put it in a basket, pick your seats, everything. Then it gives you an option. How do you want to pay? And at this point, you don't even know if you have enough miles, right? And that's what I wanted to see. It's like, okay, do I have enough to do this? And then that was crazy. So it was really frustrating. And it's just, the question is, and we'll talk about this. There's a couple types of friction. Friction one is friction on purpose. And was this on purpose? Were they actively trying to minimize mileage redemptions? Or was it on accident? Meaning, and then the third one that I was thinking about on the treadmill this morning is, absent through incompetence, right? Did no one, a UX person, a product person, a marketing person, a salesperson, or any person say, maybe somewhere in this ecosystem, we should make it easy, or God forbid, they even allow them to use this type of currency to purchase from us. And then the middle one could be it just got left off. And we both have had, and we've talked about this over the years, these projects where we're in as, say, the search person, and we're sitting there as the search person, keeping our mouth shut as we're watching the site being presented by some agency that got paid $1 gazillion to build it. And we know how the company makes money, and that's not even represented. So that's that middle bucket, right? Is it just a failure to include this? And I think it was similar to your experience where that little button was too small to even notice.
Yeah, I think this is a great example of something that is fundamentally broken, getting airline tickets. I can't think of another thing that I spend more time on, more wasted time on, than buying a ticket. And maybe it's just me, but I hate to spend money for travel. And so I'm always trying to make sure I get the best travel. But I was trying to go to Knoxville, and the ticket prices were insane. And I said, okay, well, let me use some of my American Airlines points, and went to the site. And, you know, not going to go through all the details, but basically there was buttons that said, redeem your miles. And I clicked the button, and it takes me to the form to find flights. And so I fill out the flights, and there's only options to pay for it. And so I go back, I start over again, and I land on the same page, and I'm looking more closely, and I'm like, oh, well, there's another button with the same words on that page, and it reloads the page again, and now I'm worried, like, is the price going to go up another 30% because I just spent half an hour redoing all of this crap? And it turns out that at the very start of the process, there's this little tiny tick button to use miles. And then you go through that process, and it's like ridiculous amount of number of miles you got to use. And I think that there's an opportunity for a brand to just make this so much easier, like, especially with AI. Like, I want flights in the morning out, I want a flight in the morning back, and I want the cheapest options, one connection, no longer than 2 hour stay over between them. And it should be seconds, not 20 minutes.
And I think, again, that gets back to the question, are they doing this on purpose by making that tiny? Because, as we were talking, an airline doesn't make money when you redeem them. They make money when they're sold,
Yeah.
right? Whether they're butts in seats or they're, one of the many credit card programs that are out there, that's when they make the money. And it's actually losing money when they're redeemed because that's a seat they can't sell. They've already made the money. And so I think, again, we want to think that this is just erroneous, but the fact that in your case it was a tiny little button means it was more likely on purpose. And I think if you're doing that and you understand that, and there's a sort of an acceptable risk of frustration, then go for it. Hopefully somebody's modeled it.
But think about this. I mean, this is supposed to be a loyalty program. All of that does is make me less loyal. Like, yeah, I have these miles. I want to spend them. I can't spend them. This is freaking frustrating as hell. Like, just make it a good experience.
Right. And the thing is, we zoom out, we look at how many of these do we have. Like, I wrote a blog post when we first were going to do this. We both had different examples of why we were chasing this. And my example, I wrote the blog post because it was actually going into the winter. My sprinkler company contacted me to do winterization. And so they send you this really interesting email that says, here's the date for your winterization. Click here and accept it, or call us to not accept it. And we'll schedule another one. It's like, okay, because they have to schedule it. I can see maybe calling them, right? I don't necessarily, it's ironic for somebody doing a podcast. I don't actually like talking to humans. So I hate calling people. I want to do things digitally. And so that was fine. The scheduling was fine. Then I got that email that said, okay, it's been confirmed, but you need to basically prepay. So I went to the website to prepay. And this is another one that we always get spun up about with clients, because there's a difference in the customer's perspective of the action and what the seller's action. So like banks, right? Banks loan money. People borrow money. And so this is the first thing I encountered on this site was it says billing. That was the link for billing. And I'm looking, where do I pay my bill? I'm thinking, put in an invoice or pay an invoice, and it's billing. And so I click it, and then it spawns this, form that we could have done a better job of in 1998, building a web form. And then it's like, okay, put in your dollar amount. Like, I don't know how much they're charging me for this stupid winterization. They never told me. Yeah. Right. And I don't necessarily care because I have to have it done. So I don't have the amount. So, and then how does that amount tie back to me? And then I said, why can't you give me an invoice number? Why can't you at least give me a pull down? And so I wrote all these problems. And then I sent it to them, and not accusing the company. Like I have no ill will against the company other than the fact that they paid somebody and paid an organization to build and manage this system for them who should have known better. But what I asked them is like, did anyone in your company act like a customer? Get an email that tells you to prepay for a service so that you don't have to do, oh, because of the automation, they no longer will send you an invoice after the fact. Because that's what you used to do. They would send you an invoice and then you'd have to call them if you want to use a credit card, or you could write a check and mail a check. So their automation was this mess. And it's, but did anybody even do this? That's all I ask, is that if you're introducing something, have someone come try it and go through the process. And did they have friction? Now, the only challenge to this is that internal person may have been the very person who wrote this fiasco or created this fiasco to begin with. So to them, it's a logical flow. Right. So maybe you get somebody else, pull somebody from the warehouse, it's the grandma test, right? Remember, we used to always tell people the fastest way to find bugs and stuff is ask grandma to do it, or ask, your kids are usually smarter than you on digital things. So don't ask the kids.
Your parents.
But, ask your parents, ask somebody outside of to do this. And you'll find that can fix so many potential things.
Yeah. Yeah. I have twice with new clients. The first thing I do is crawl a site, try and find all the forms I can, test all the forms. For one of them, the contact form didn't work. Nobody knew where it went. Nobody knew, they weren't getting leads. I mean, didn't care, right? That was an easy fix. The other one, is less subtle, but I filled out the form in the morning. I expected to hear back. I said, hey, this is Bill. I'm just checking to see who gets this. Let me know as soon as you get it. I get an email back the next day. Hey, Bill, I just got this. Thanks. I sent an email back. I said, you just got this? I sent it yesterday. Oh, yeah, the info goes to a spam thing, and overnight, I guess it runs through the spam check, and then it sends it the next day. Mm-hmm. So 24-hour delay in getting the form. And, we know that response time compared to a closure rate is like, a downward hockey stick. If you don't respond like within the hour, your rate of closure really drops.
And I mean, that's something relatively easy to automate both sides of this equation, right? Right. You can write a simple test to ping it, to go through, fill it in, and then get a response, and then does the tool. I mean, there's commercial tools. I mean, you could build a skill for this in Claude. You can do whatever. I mean, you can even write an auto agent in your email client typically to do this. And all you're doing is basically sending it, having it go fill out your own contact form, send it, wait for a recipient, because again, you can put it's coming from Bob the tester, agent, and then, okay, when did I get it? What was the duration? Those simple things, then it's just like using, an uptime monitor on your website. It's amazing how many people don't even know because, right now it's the frequency of updating plugins. If somebody's on a WordPress site, it's updating all the time. And you never know when one of these plugins could break or trap it or degrade it or something. And so, I have these uptime monitors on every site that I work with, that I own. And it's interesting how many times I get flagged. Sometimes it's a 5-minute downtime. Sometimes it's longer, but at least I know that, hey, this site is down. And then you go there and you've got that, that warning script from WordPress saying, or Cloudflare or something. Cloudflare is a whole nother one that, let's get into a whole nother bugaboo, the Cloudflare warning message, right? That says you're not able to access this site. And we get this a lot because we do a lot of crawling. And so Cloudflare will often associate us with, a rogue IP. And this always happens if you're like at a conference where there's like a gazillion search people all crawling, right? So that whole IP block gets flagged as being, sort of aggressive. And then the answer comes back in saying, hey, if you got this, send it to, the webmaster or the security manager, and reference this like 400 character, error status. And nobody knows what this means.
Yeah.
If you're in the trades, okay, yeah, okay, I tripped the 403 switch or whatever, to where, you think I'm a rogue bot. And then you get others that will have, I just saw one on a grocery site the other day that thought I was a rogue bot. And I had to, pull the little thing to the right, but there was no direction. I just knew. Nothing said, hey, if you're a human, drag this thing to the right.
Oh, really?
It
Wow.
was just like, figure this shit out yourself. And I think all of these things they mean well,
Yeah.
right? But nobody's thinking through the sequence of events. What can we make that simple warning statement better? And then I had another one that it was the first time I'd ever seen it. So again, doing some work, the type of work we do, I was trying to look at a page, and when I looked at the page in Chrome DevTools, that sent a different signal. And it actually said in their warning statement that, oh, you might be using, DevTools to look at this page. So that's not allowed. I mean, at
Hmm.
least they acknowledge. I'm like, oh, wow, I've never seen that before, but thanks for
Right.
telling me. And I went out of DevTools and went back in. And after the second page, I got that, you know, not the
Warning.
standard CAPTCHA, but this pulled to the right authenticator that I was a human. But I mean, all these things really, they're all for good. I really want to make that point. These things do amazing stuff. It's just often the people that implement them are not thinking it through, and we don't have people trying to break stuff like that. What happens if a human comes that's a bot, and like now we have a lot of people using AI to find things, and they're clicking links, and if you come through that link and it's got a source is ChatGPT reference. I've seen a couple sites, because it's referencing that, actually flag you and prevent you from entering because they're reading ChatGPT, and the thing, like, they're punishing ChatGPT, but they're actually punishing the user. I mean, we could go off on a lot of these, but I know you had, I think, a half dozen or so common things that I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about, and one was sort of like, ignoring their feedback and needs. If you send an email, a lot of times, like I had the same airline, I was trying to upgrade, and their own guidance told me, send an email to this address, put in your booking number. And I did, and it sent me a response back saying, hey, this booking doesn't look like it was from us. We can only upgrade you on our airline. And like, it was from you, but I couldn't respond back because it said this response doesn't allow comments because it came out of a different system. So I had to go in, submit another one, and it took me 4 times to submit to this. So again, these feedback or lack of feedback, like you were the example you had. So what are some other ones from your experience? Because you're on more of the pure play marketing and sort of, lead gen growth
Yeah.
revenue side of this. What are you seeing from a revenue impact side that people are doing?
Well, I think all frustration leads to a loss of revenue, but there's, obvious things like poor navigation and visual hierarchy. I mean, one of the things I like to do is I like to work with a client and come up with customer journeys, then actually write very specific scenarios and have them hand them off to secretaries. Like, we said a minute ago, could your parent do this or your grandma? And you'd be amazed at the feedback you get from just doing that simple thing. And you'll find people don't understand the navigational terms, so they think they're going one place, they go to another place. There's misleading links or buttons. One of the things that bugs me is you expect to click on a link because it's saying like view, and it ends up being a download. I never read downloads when I'm trying to look for an information. I'll download something for reference, but not usually while I'm on the web actively looking for stuff.
Especially
But
on your phone,
yeah, right,
because
exactly.
then you
That's
got
the
to
other
go
thing
find the
is
damn thing.
everybody listening to this call. should navigate and try to complete a task on their phone. You will be amazed at the bad UX. Like there's images like lopped off the page, forms with a form actually on the wrong side of the form, like just crazy stuff because no one's ever looked at their page on a mobile device. So that's something I suggest everybody do. But things like autoplay videos with sound, that's really annoying as crap. The obvious technical stuff, there's a lot of broken links that might be JavaScript and are not picked up in crawls. That could be broken buttons. Someone should try, and maybe someone has, but all of the websites that I visit for the first time, they want me to sign up for their newsletter in the first 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, why would I ever sign up for a newsletter? Like, I want another newsletter, number one. But within 2 seconds of visiting a site.
And then a multitude of other pop-ups, right?
Yeah,
Here's today's
you
deal.
close that, and well, not you don't even have that anymore. Now you have all of the
GDPR,
forms,
California, and yeah.
And depending on the pop-up that you get, like some of them don't even let you opt out. At this point in my life, I just picked the path of least resistance. I don't know. What do you do?
Same.
Yeah.
I will back out. I don't think there's anybody that I need the information from you that bad. And, I used to talk about this idea of Google being the concept police or the content police. And because some of this stuff, which I don't think enough people know, Google, this stuff may get you deselected from even being shown to people.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine, like, one of the things I know that you work on a lot is low, slow pages, like restaurants with menus and PDFs, and there's just all these things where, if there's a choice, and again, you think about this decision tree, right? Google's got to show, or any search engine is going to show you results, and they know you're on a mobile device, and if they know that, I don't know, you've got a bagel place over here, and then 2 blocks down is another bagel place, and one is painful to use on a mobile device because Google's predominantly crawling with mobile. So this one, they've identified these, painful things. So they could opt to not even show that one. You might rank in a desktop, but in a mobile result, you may not be there. Just because it's painful to use, whether it's the pop up, pop over, pop down, slow loading, because if it's slow for Google to ingest it, it's going to be slow for a user to interact with it.
And AI is not going to ingest it at all.
Definitely not.
It's going to skip right past it.
We're already seeing that. Like all of these things, that's an interesting thing. I'm actually writing a point of view on these single page applications. I had written it for, from an SEO perspective, that, one of the problems was that you couldn't, get the link value or the link tree out to say all these links from the homepage were basically invisible because they weren't even shown. There was no ahref in the page, right? It was an object that you clicked on, and then that basically went to a lookup table, found the destination, and took you there. So there's nothing for, for Google or Bing, let's say, to take, okay, something linked off the homepage probably has a lot of value that's transferred to it from the homepage, but none of that's happening. And then I was rewriting this for AI to say they're just not going to spend the time to sift through this. They're not going to load the JavaScript. They're not going to try to figure out this path. They're not going to render it. They're not going to do all this stuff. And so everybody and their brother is trying to get in these AI results. And so I think, we've got to be thinking about this and how do we, really make this painless. And I think, like you said, just spend time on a mobile device, on a tablet, on, a desktop if you need to, but definitely on the mobile device and go through it. And, and just look at, like, here was one. I was invited to a call for a massive website that was being rebuilt, and the company created this, I guess developers call them sitemaps, and it's really the taxonomy of the site. And I asked a simple question. I said, did anybody take analytics and look at the top 5 paths from the homepage? Or did anybody take the top 5 paths from, the product listing page or the products page?
Hmm.
Did anybody look at any of these actual user paths, or did we just start throwing things on, in some sort of tool,
Yeah.
or it turns out what it was is that somebody said, I need a website built this way, and we want all these feature functions, and build me this sitemap or this tree. But there was no, where do people actually go when they land there? And it's interesting. And I told him this story I had at a big company where, we had two, not one, but two PhD UX guys. I mean, like they opened a meeting with, I have a PhD in user experience. So anytime you have to announce your pedigree before you say something, means what you're about to say is probably suspect or going to be challenged. And they both said, here's our new vision for this navigation. And like your experience, like giving it to the admins or to the warehouse people or people that aren't web designers, they're just users. They would not entertain any feedback at all.
Wow.
And so it was like, all right, cool. And then a month after, we're in a meeting, and they're like, man, traffic has went down, user experience went down, complaints are through the roof. And I said, yeah, because nobody can figure out this navigation. And they're like, well, how do you know that? You're the search guy. I'm like, well, we have this cool thing called search, site search. And we look at where did 94% of everybody landing on the homepage go? They went into site search.
Yeah.
And when the majority of your people on the homepage go into site search, it tells me that they can't figure out where to go to find something they came there for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, who wakes up in the morning and says, I want to use a site search? Nobody, except if you're stuck trying to find something on a site and can't get
Exactly.
there for navigation.
And
Yeah.
one of these cool things you mentioned, wording. I remember this same company. They had renamed, I think it was service as a pull down option, and they meant it like products and services. And people were clicking into this, they're trying to get service, like customer service.
Hmm.
And it was very interesting that, people were coming in and backing out, and we ended up changing it to solutions, and the number of clicks from the navigation dropped. And they're like, oh my God, people aren't going into services. But then somebody else said, but all of the click to call on the services pages were people wanting to know how to find customer service. It wasn't to ask about the service. And so when we started stitching things together, we found that. Anyways, there's a lot of these examples, but the point is, are the people using it? And let's use data we can use. Like, do we have high bounce rates? This is one we used to talk about on international a lot with Href Lang is, do we have a lot of people from a country, a different country other than what we're supporting? Let's say we're Australia. And the New Zealanders come in, and we have like an 85% bounce rate from New Zealanders on this page. And then when you find out that they came to the Australian page instead of the New Zealand page, and the price is in Australian dollars, and they can't easily get to New Zealand, so they hit the back button and try to find the New Zealand site because, it's 2026, and apparently we're not allowed to have a country locator on our website anymore, let alone in the footer where everybody put it in 2024, because it was taking up prime real estate in the header.
I just ran into this exact same thing where I was looking at a site, looking at the site was set up by region, by language, and it cookied me in Brazil, Portuguese, and I wanted to go back to the English version, and I put in the English URL, and it redirected me to the Portuguese site again.
Yeah, because they set the cookie.
I gotta clear my cookies. Like, what the hell?
And that's usually tied to that cookie consent tab, right? And
Yeah.
if you really look into that, that's exactly 9 times out of 10. I found when we have this experience, it's exactly that, is that it's tied to the cookie, and most people just click it. And so in the process of saving your acceptance of cookie, it's also logging that language and country preference. And you can't get out of it unless you maybe go into incognito or clear your cookies, and then be very careful to do that. But it's things like that that, again, what is the action that's happening? Redirects are the same way. We've talked about this in international, that if I come and you in the United States, you want to go look at, let's say, the Brazilian Portuguese website, and it says, yo, hey, Bill, you're in America. You
Yeah.
got to see the American one. We
Yeah.
don't know that you're trying to diagnose a problem in Brazil. You got to go over here. And there's no way to get out of that trap unless you go in through a VPN, and then it will welcome you with open arms into that version. So,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, look at your data, look at the process, spend time on it. Anything else that people, just, is
Let's talk
there a
about forms for a
30
second.
minutes?
Let's talk about forms for a second. So most people would think of forms as a contact us form, but there's lots of business being done on forms with functionality. Like I had another client that had an option to upload drawings. It was an engineering company, and people could fill out a form and attach files, and that information would go. And nobody ever checked to see if the files were actually being sent. And so they were for like 6 months they were working with people who for the first time sent them contact information, and were responding like they didn't know what they were talking about because the customer thought that they had the drawings.
That's interesting.
So that's one. And the one that I personally have. So there's a ski resort by us, and they do a Halloween haunted walk. And part of the form is to pick your time slot, and it sends you like a confirmation with the QR code that you scan when you get to the line. And the first year I did it with my son, it worked fine. The second year I went to go do it, I couldn't remember what email I signed up with. So I tried both of them, and I couldn't figure out the password connected with the email. And only, it's like the airline. It's like you fill out all this information, and then you can't submit. And doing this on a phone, and they hadn't given it any thought. Like the font size was like microscopic, and it was so frustrating. It was like I must have told 5 people about this. That's how bad it was. You have any bad form experiences?
Yeah, I think there's some that they ask you so many questions,
Why?
right?
Why?
And then
What are you going
they
to do with
block you.
What are you going to do with with the street address? Really?
Right,
You're going to drive to their house? I
right.
mean,
And everything is required,
yeah,
right? And then like simple things like, well, talk about the password, right? Why, you can get the scripts now for free of just telling people, like, this is my favorite. It says simply email, and then it will come back and say, oh, you need to put a password. And so you type in your go-to password, right? And then it comes back and says it doesn't meet the criteria. What's your criteria, bro? Help me
oh yeah,
understand
yeah.
your criteria.
It's
And then
gotten
so
it's
you
gotten
figure,
better.
okay, it's
It's
got to be
gotten
8
better.
characters.
But yeah, that was really common. I remember, 6, 7 years ago, that was so common. At least now you'll see a little note like it requires number, capital, and special character. But
Right. If you require anything, tell us what your requirements are. Tell me what I have to provide you, to do this. Like, what is
both
your magical
before you
formula?
both before you have to enter it, and then what was wrong, or
Yeah.
at least what is right
Right.
if it's wrong. Yeah, and how many times have you filled out a form and it kicked it back and it erased all the stuff on you?
Yeah.
like all the
Maintain the
field
state
sites.
of it. And then I think another common one is, well, it's sort of let me use my words correctly because we have marketers that listen to this. It's like if you want to get the discount for signing up for their, and they'll say, sign up to our promos or newsletter, like you said, the newsletter. You can't really come into the site until you do it. And you're like, fine, I'll give you my throwaway email address. And then it pops up, says, well, now you need to give us your phone number so we can text you. And
Yeah.
then we're going to give it to everybody we've ever associated with so they can spam you. And then, you're like, nope, I'm not doing that. And then you never get the code because it's a twofer, right? They not only want your phone number, but now the 15% that made it, okay, I will forgive you this time. And for 15% off, I will give it to you. But then you don't even get that because you didn't give them your text. They didn't state you had to give both. And so I will never give anybody my phone number because I get so many spam texts as it is, let alone not everybody and the brother that you know can spam me. So this things like that is like just a simple, what percent of people gave you the email and gave you the text? I'm sure people just don't care. You get a Google phone number or some other throwaway phone number and put it in and it is what it is. But anyways, it's just things like that are we legitimately reducing friction? Do the forms work? Is it the minimal information? We used to call this dripping on people, where we'd get the minimum information, and then as we communicate with them over time, we'd ask for a little more and a little more and a little more. And then here's the other big one. Like, I think we talked about this before with B2B, where all the good stuff is gated behind a login or a lead gen form. So all the good stuff for a report, there's not even enough to where, let alone AI, but even Google can showcase that. Like I was looking for one the other day. I was trying to cite a report that other people had cited, and I just wanted to make sure it was in there. And everything was behind, this login. And so, Perplexity and ChatGPT both said, well, I can't get to it because it's behind a login. And then no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get it. It was one of these, once you got to the page, it was an auto download, but it wasn't auto downloading. I didn't have an option to click. And it was like, fine, I won't cite you. I won't perpetuate your data in this article that'll be read by 10 people. But, it was just things like that we're not thinking it through. I think that's the big one. Try it and make sure that you haven't brought friction. And then, to sort of close out the thoughts, there's friction elsewhere. I think, there's some other things that you had noted in the notes about other types of friction that are maybe behind the scenes with, like, images that are too large or images that don't resize. This is the whole use it on a mobile thing. What other, types of friction are there, and what are strategies to potentially reduce them?
So for sure, you want to think about where people are using the site. So at what time, what are they doing? Do they? So one of the things that I think really is a killer for at least brands is when you call and you're trying to make an appointment. Let's say I tried to make an appointment with a doctor, and it took 40 minutes on the phone. 40 minutes on the phone to make an appointment. Like, how is that even possible? I called. They said they weren't the right office. They sent me to another office. The office then started going through like every question in the book to find out what doctor I needed. And then, because it was a new patient, but still, I mean, this should not take 40 minutes. And then, like, I think I almost made the girl cry. I said, if possible, I'd really like to come in on a Friday morning. Well, I don't think she was trained, or I don't think their system could figure out how to look at Friday mornings that were open. I want to remind people of our free Facebook group, where we use that as an opportunity to discuss these things, and you can ask any questions you want. You can also suggest ideas for upcoming podcasts. You can find that by searching International Web Mastery Free Group.
So I actually wrote something, maybe I didn't post it. It was about I want another option on the call menu for I did go to the website.
Yeah.
And let
there
me
you
give
go.
you this
Fine.
because I was trying to open a CD, a certificate of deposit, and I went to this bank where I already have an account, and I'm trying to do it. And because it was going to be a joint CD, it said, you need to contact us because their rules require them. I actually have to take my phone to my wife and say, do you really want to open this? Are you under duress? And, we have a joint account. We already have 2 accounts with you. So, yep, it's cool. It's like, that's all they needed. But when you call, and then so to call, like you wait online for 20 minutes. And at least this one they had, we can call you back when an agent's free. And the first thing, and when before you get that, every 30 seconds they pop in, you can do this transaction on our website.
If anybody runs that sort of a service for their company, if your average wait time is 10 minutes, have longer than a 30-second loop. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. But that whole point of they kept reminding me I could do what I came to do on
Yeah.
the web. And
Yeah.
then the first thing the person says is, how can I help you? And this was good. My wife was sitting next to me anticipating having to answer them. So by now, people know that, I say whatever craziness comes in my head. So the guy says, would you like me to open add the joint owner for you? And, yes, I could have just said, yes, that'd be awesome. And I said, yeah, there's apparently no other way. I can't do it on the damn web. And, my wife's like, you can just say yes, please. But by this time, you're so frustrated because that's what you tried to do. And I know it's on the script. It is on the script. And, I just said, I did say, I'm sorry for, my frustration, but I did try to do this, and that I went through the same set of questions to do it with the person who's actually telling me I can do this on the web when I can't do it on the web. And that's just the frustration, right? These loops. So just simply put an option so that you can acknowledge that the person has already went through the web gauntlet and is reaching out to a human because the web gauntlet didn't work.
I hadn't thought about this, but this is an idea. What if you created a landing page of all the things you can't do on the web? Right?
Yeah.
So that when somebody searches, how do I do X? That page pops up and says, oh, you can't do it on the web. Call this number. Maybe you have a specific number for that.
Anything,
Yeah.
because then the fact that like this, it picked up my account data. My wife is in there as well. So the fact that if they had it where I could pick your spouse or pick other people, if you have other people on a joint account, and boom, then it's populated. Now, we've had others where, they will send her something to authenticate and she'll authenticate it. But this one, like that, they could have said you need to talk to an agent, give them, super secret code 49 or whatever it is, something like that. Or, yeah, you can't do this. There's one a project I'm working on where there's some of it's like for a park, and some of their attractions aren't functioning. And it's an interesting thing. They have a page that's just a list of these attractions are all under maintenance. And we were saying, can we add schema or can we amplify this so that when people search for this attraction, it actually tells them that it's not. And it's like I asked them for their firstborn. They were so furious that I had the nerve to want to amplify the fact that something at their park was, under maintenance. It's like, no, we have to say that it's under maintenance as cryptically and as removed from any chain of interaction we possibly can. Legally, we have to say it. But God, we don't want the world to know. We don't want them to not come to our park when, by seeing that
Yeah.
it's under maintenance. We want them to come and be pleasantly surprised that the reason they came is not available.
So friction by design.
Friction by design, right? And so again, I get that friction by like price. But I'm telling you, boys and girls, those days are short-lived now, because the best thing you can do is pop over to AI or go to Reddit or somewhere and simply ask the magical question: how much is it? Can I do this? Is something available? What is the going discount? Like, you have to do the super secret handshake and request a decoder ring to get, some sort of discount or offer, when you just, put that into Chat GPT or your LLM of choice, and it will puke it out for you,
Yeah.
what it is and how to bypass it. And so I think it's going to change a lot of thinking. But at the end of the day, our recommendation is, listen to this again, go through the show notes, get the, top sources of friction, listen to your competitors, listen to your customers, listen to the complaints, ask people, did you have any challenge doing this today? Everybody and the brother is asking you for surveys, and don't ask me to do your damn survey before I come in. Like, I don't know. And
Yeah,
I'm
right.
probably not going to, if I'm waiting 40 minutes on hold, I'm not going to wait another 40 minutes for your survey to tell you how much my experience sucked.
Right.
Right. So I think it's things like that. And what we want to do is just really encourage people to think about this and, and really try to elevate this, because I think every bit of friction you can reduce or remove from these pathways is only going to improve customer satisfaction and, make it easy for me to give you my money.
Yeah.
And do business with you.
Right. Right. And, people have choices, and people decide to talk to other people about the things that they hate more than they like to talk about the things that go right. And you don't want to only be known for the things that go wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess I would wrap it up here. I would say do two things. I would say come up with a couple different goals that are important to you on your website, and get on your phone and see if you could do them. And then take that same idea, maybe in detail, because someone might not know your market and the specific things people are looking for. Write up a scenario and give it to some people in your company, or anybody. Give it to your wife, give it to your friends, and say, hey, here's a scenario. You're looking for this. This is who you are. The end goal would be to find this information on the site and point them to the homepage, and have them talk out loud about what they're actually doing, what they're thinking. Was every click what they expected? Are they feeling happy, or are they feeling frustrated with each click?
That sounds great. I was just looking at this Loom. That's the one you use a lot. Just tell people to use the free version of Loom to exactly do that, right? Go through and you can capture that emotion, which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Or have them just do a voice memo, maybe as they're doing it as well. I mean, something to capture that experience.
You could do it with Zoom. You could do a video recording. You could do it with a Teams recording, because you would see where their mouse is going, where their eyes are going, what their expressions are. And you can't coach them, but you can ask them, like, why did you click that?
But anything to get feedback and action on it. So cool.
All right. Well, any final thoughts?
Nope, I think that's it. Just get out there, go through your website, pretend you're a customer, and see how much you're pissing people off. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, we hope you're finding value in our conversations. Again, if you're enjoying the show, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. We also want to hear from you. Your feedback helps motivate us to keep making these and plan future episodes. Follow us on International Web Mastery on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. And please tell us what you want us to talk about. Tell us what your frustrations are. It would be really interesting to cite what you tell us in our next podcast. Till next time. Thanks, Bill.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good one.
Hey, this is Bill Scully. I just wanted to let you know that we have a free training course called Demystifying Hreflang. It includes 6 modules and is over an hour long with a quiz at the end of each module. You can find it at internationalwebmastery.com. Hope to see you there.